The golden light of early morning spilled across the rugged Ohio mountains, casting long shadows over the steep, jagged cliffs. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. Brody and Mike wiped sweat from their brows as they paused, midway through a grueling climb they'd planned for months. Both were seasoned hikers, used to tough terrain, unpredictable weather, and the occasional surprise encounter with wildlife. Yet, as they stood halfway up that lonely cliff, neither could have known that today's adventure would turn into a discovery that would change lives forever. While navigating a narrow ledge, Brody spotted something strange. A perfectly straight set of lines carved into the rock, far too symmetrical to be natural. "Mike, check this out," he called, waving his friend over. Mike, still focused on reaching the summit before dark, sighed in frustration, but humored him. As he got closer, his impatience melted away. There, hidden among the rough, weathered stone, was what looked unmistakably like the outline of a doorway. Straight, deliberate cuts formed a frame, almost invisible unless you looked closely. This wasn't just erosion. Someone had been here, and they'd sealed something away. The two friends, hearts pounding with excitement and curiosity, set to work. Using their climbing gear, they improvised a rope and pulley system. With a few grunts of effort and a final loud crash that echoed through the valley, a massive boulder gave way, revealing a black hole leading deep into the mountain's core. Brody and Mike exchanged a look that needed no words. They were going in. Inside, the air turned heavy and wet, clinging to their skin. Their flashlights barely pierced the darkness. The walls were damp, slick with moisture, and as Brody brushed his hand against the rock, a rotten egg smell filled the air. "Sulfur," Mike whispered knowingly. Evidence that dynamite might have been used to carve out this tunnel long ago. Their minds raced with possibilities. An old mining operation, a forgotten hideout, maybe even something more sinister. Their exploration paused as a loud, unnatural whine echoed from deep within the tunnel. It wasn't the wind. Instinct should have sent them running, but adrenaline and curiosity pushed them forward. They crept further, deeper into the mountain, until they stumbled upon something chilling. Tools. Old, corroded shovels and pickaxes leaned casually against the wall. Yet bizarrely, while the metal parts were rusted, the wooden handles looked almost new. Brody and Mike froze. Someone had been here recently. Before they could process what they were seeing, the eerie whine returned, this time closer. And this time, it wasn't just a sound. It was whistling. A cheerful, tuneless whistle, completely out of place in the cold, dark heart of the mountain. They pressed themselves against the damp walls, flashlights off, barely breathing as the source of the whistling approached. A flickering oil lantern bobbed into view, carried by a hunched old man who seemed oblivious to their presence. They watched in stunned silence as the man grabbed one of the shovels and wandered deeper into the tunnel. As he disappeared into the gloom, Brody and Mike knew they had no choice. They had to follow him. Carefully, silently, they stalked the flickering light through the endless black, until it led them into a massive underground chamber. What they saw next left them absolutely speechless. The cavern was filled with gold. Not just a few nuggets or flakes, but towering mounds of solid, gleaming gold nuggets, piled high under the dim glow of dozens of oil lamps. Mike gasped audibly, barely able to believe his eyes. The fortune before them was unimaginable. Millions of dollars worth of gold, hidden away beneath a forgotten Ohio mountain. And yet, the old man didn't seem like a millionaire. He worked tirelessly, swinging his pickaxe at the walls, extracting more and more gold with mechanical precision. Brody and Mike crouched low behind a giant rusted machine, trying to stay out of sight, hearts pounding as they tried to figure out who this man was and why he had spent decades alone, hoarding unimaginable wealth underground. They didn't know it yet, but the old man's story would reveal a heartbreaking truth and would set Brody and Mike on a mission far greater than anything they had planned when they first set out that morning. Brody and Mike barely dared to breathe. The old man moved with an eerie rhythm, humming softly to himself, shoveling gold into smaller crates scattered across the cavern. For several minutes, the two friends simply observed, unable to make sense of what they were seeing. Finally, Mike whispered, "We have to talk to him. We can't just leave without knowing what this is." Brody nodded hesitantly. Summoning every ounce of courage, they stepped out from behind their hiding spot. "Sir?" Brody called out softly, raising his hands to show they meant no harm. The man froze. The only sound was the slow dripping of water from the ceiling. Slowly, he turned to face them. His face, illuminated by the trembling lantern light, was deeply lined and weathered, eyes sharp but tired. To their surprise, he didn't shout or panic. Instead, he gave a weary smile. "Took you long enough," he said cryptically, his voice raspy with age. "What is this place?" Mike asked, stepping forward cautiously. The old man sighed, setting down his pickaxe. "This," he said, waving his arm around the golden cavern, "is a curse disguised as fortune." He introduced himself as Elias Harper. Decades ago, Elias had been part of a secret mining operation sanctioned during wartime, intended to harvest rare minerals hidden deep beneath these mountains. But they hadn't found just minerals. They'd found a massive underground vein of nearly pure gold. The government decided it was too dangerous to make public knowledge, so they sealed it away, fabricating stories of unstable ground and dangerous conditions to keep people out. Elias had been a young man then, tasked with maintaining the site. But something had gone wrong. One night, an explosion caused the entire upper shaft to collapse, trapping him inside. When no rescue came, he realized he had been abandoned. For years, he survived on canned supplies stored for the workers, eventually learning to sustain himself entirely off rainwater seepage and the occasional supplies left secretly by locals who still believed in the legend. Driven half-mad by isolation, Elias had continued mining, almost obsessively, under the delusion that if he extracted enough gold, someone would come back for him. But no one ever did. Until now. Brody and Mike stood stunned, the weight of Elias's story settling over them like the chill of the cavern air. This wasn't just a hidden treasure trove. It was a tomb, a prison built by greed and then forgotten. They knew they couldn't just leave Elias down here. He needed help, but convincing him to leave his life's work behind would be a different battle. "We can get you out," Mike said, his voice firm with resolve. "You don't have to stay here." Elias hesitated, looking around at the glittering piles of gold. "Out there, I have nothing. Here, I have everything. And yet, nothing." Brody took a step closer. "You have a second chance. Come with us." Finally, the old man nodded slowly, a tear glistening in the corner of his eye. The journey back up the tunnel was grueling. It took hours to retrace their steps, helping Elias along whenever he stumbled from weakness. When they finally emerged from the mountain's cold, dark mouth into the bright afternoon sun, Elias blinked in disbelief, overwhelmed by the open sky and fresh air he hadn't seen in decades. Word of the discovery spread quickly. Authorities secured the site, ensuring the gold wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. News outlets dubbed Elias the Lost Miner, and his story touched millions around the world. Despite the offers of fame and fortune, Elias chose a quiet life, settling in a small town where he could finally live in peace. Brody and Mike, once just ordinary hikers, found their lives forever changed. They had ventured into the unknown in search of adventure, and found something far more valuable than gold: